On April 21st, US Strategic Command, STRATCOM, issued a stark warning that America may rapidly face a changing climate of international conflict that could result in nuclear war. STRATCOM defines itself as a global warfighting command with a mission to deter strategic attack and guarantee the security of our nation and our allies, according to its website. The command tweeted a preview of its annual posture statement on April 19, where it said, "We must account for the possibility of conflict leading to conditions which could very rapidly drive an adversary to consider nuclear use as their least bad option." Commander of the US Space Command, General James Dickinson, wrote in a piece published in The Hill, "United States Space Command faces a unique dilemma in that we can't plan for future conflicts based on how we fought previous conflicts, even if we were inclined to do so. Rather, we are preparing for the war not yet fought." General Dickinson asked, "Why do we need to prepare for such a conflict when space has traditionally been a peaceful domain, open to all for exploration, and whose benefits improve the lives of virtually every human being on Earth?" His response, "As I will soon testify to Congress, the answer is because highly capable competitors realize the extraordinary military and economic advantages that space-based capabilities give to the United States and our allies." STRATCOM Commander Admiral Charles Richard, in his testimony to the House Armed Services Committee and the Senate Committee on Armed Services, sounded a public alarm on the rising nuclear threat he feels is posted by both the Chinese Communist Party and Russia. For the first time in our history, the nation is facing two nuclear-capable strategic peer adversaries at the same time, both of whom have to be deterred differently. Chinese and Russians' advances are eroding our conventional and strategic deterrence. "China is the pacing threat for the nation," said Admiral Richard. "They're deploying a strategic bomber, and they possess now 6 second-generation Jing-class ballistic missile submarines, and they're capable of continuous at-sea deterrent patrol." He continued, "In the very near term, China will possess a credible nuclear triad. China is capable of executing any plausible nuclear employment strategy regionally now, and will soon be able to do so at intercontinental ranges." STRATCOM's commander said when it comes to the CCP that it is important to look at what they do, not what they say, and where they're going, not where they are, adding that in his assessment he has no choice but to view China as a significant strategic threat and share Secretary Austin's assessment. China's the pacing threat for the nation and DoD at large. Amid current political and trade tensions with China, the Australian federal government drew a line in the sand on April 21st when it cancelled Victoria State's agreements to join Communist China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, stating the dealings were inconsistent with Australian foreign policy. Foreign Minister Marise Payne will use the Morrison government's comprehensive new veto laws to override Victoria's previous BRI memorandum with the Chinese Communist Party, reported The Guardian. In response, China's spokespersons warned the decision to cancel the BRI's vast network of investments would risk any comeback in the relationship between Australia and Communist China as trading partners. However, critics of the CCP say that the BRI is merely camouflage for Beijing's forging of geopolitical and financial leverage in its quest for global hegemony. The disruption comes as growing diplomatic disputes between Beijing and Canberra have postured increasingly hawkish over trade and competition for dominance in the Pacific. Tensions were already high, and the CCP is still incensed after Australia publicly demanded an independent investigation into the origins of the SARS-CoV-2 pandemic, which appeared in Wuhan in late 2019. In response, China began limiting Australian beef imports and imposed tariffs on Australian barley in May of 2020. In November, the communist regime imposed tariffs on Australian wine while threatening to block sugar, lobster, coal and copper ore imports. With Canberra both limiting Chinese influence in the country and prohibiting telecom giant Huawei from developing Australia's 5G network, including restricting foreign investment laws for businesses, Foreign Minister Payne said she anticipates the overwhelming majority would not be affected by her continuing foreign arrangements investigations. Whether CCP-backed Confucius Institutes at Australian universities will continue to be allowed remains to be seen as criticism of the Communist Party's installation of self-serving agendas that overwrite true Chinese culture and history continue to mount. According to Bloomberg, the announcement to reject Victoria's BRI agreements came the same day that a Chinese diplomat appeared to indicate the ties between Beijing and Canberra are still intact. On Wednesday, Wang Xingying, the Chinese embassy's deputy head of mission, complained to reporters, "We have done nothing intentionally to hurt this relationship, and we have seen too many incidents over the past few years in which China's interest has been hurt." The deployment of Russian troops on Ukraine's border and in annexed Crimea has raised alarms across Western nations. According to the Wall Street Journal report, the photos show Su-30 fighters lined up on a runway at an airbase in Crimea. Also could be seen in the picture airborne troops, motorised rifles and armoured units, attack helicopters, smoke generators, reconnaissance drones, jamming equipment and a military hospital. The office of the EU's top diplomat, Josep Borrell, said it is the highest military deployment of the Russian army on the Ukrainian borders ever. It's clear that it's a matter of concern when you deploy a lot of troops, Borrell said. Well, a spark can jump here or there. On Monday, Borrell had told more than 150,000 troops in a press conference, but his office corrected to more than 100,000 later without disclosing the reason for the change. The Pentagon reported that the Russian military built-up was more extensive than that in 2014, and it was not clear that it was for training purposes. It has coincided with the conflict between Ukraine and Russia-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine. Earlier, a senior Kremlin official in Moscow warned Ukraine against using force to reclaim control of the rebel east and said that this might force Russia to step in to protect civilians there, according to Sky News. Borrell said no new economic sanctions or expulsions of Russian diplomats were planned for the time being after Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba called on the bloc to impose new sanctions on Russia while addressing EU diplomats during Monday's meeting. State Department spokesman Ned Price, raising concern over Russia's plans to block foreign naval ships and other vessels in parts of the Black Sea, said, "This represents yet another unprovoked escalation in Moscow's ongoing campaign to undermine and destabilize Ukraine," Price said. On Monday, the US Federal Aviation Administration urged airlines to fly with extreme caution near the Ukraine-Russian border, citing potential flight safety risks.